Have you ever wished you could feel less? That you could find a switch deep within your consciousness and simply turn down the volume on the world's piercing noise? You feel the sting of every careless word, the crushing weight of every judgment, the sharp disappointment of every unmet expectation. It is a state of perpetual emotional exposure, as if you were born without a protective layer, forced to navigate a landscape of sharp edges and brutal friction. This isn't a fleeting mood. It has become the very texture of your existence. You find yourself retreating, exhausted by the sheer act of feeling so deeply. This hypersensitivity, which you have likely labeled a weakness or a curse, feels like a fundamental design flaw, leaving you adrift and overwhelmed in the turbulent waters of your own inner world, repeating the same patterns of pain. In response to this constant onslaught, you have become an architect of defenses. Brick by painstaking brick, you have been trying to construct an impenetrable fortress around your heart. The blueprint is simple. If feeling is the source of pain, then the solution must be to stop feeling. You seek to become the stoic, the unmoved observer, the one who cannot be wounded, because they have sealed off the very capacity to be touched. This is not a project born of malice, but of profound suffering. It is a desperate, seemingly logical attempt to achieve a state of invulnerability in a world that seems to reward it. You believe that if you can just make the walls high enough, if you can just mortar every crack, you will finally find peace, safety, and control within your self-made psychic sanctuary. But a chilling question begins to echo within those very walls you have so carefully built. What if this fortress is not a sanctuary, but a prison? What if the stoicism you chase is not a shield, but a cage that isolates you from the most vital parts of your own being? The profound sense of fragmentation you experience, the feeling of living a scripted life written by someone else, is the direct consequence of this internal siege. In your effort to lock out the world's pain, you are inadvertently locking yourself in, starving the very soul you seek to protect. The truth is that the armor of insensitivity comes at an unbearable cost, a disconnection from your own essence. What if the one you are truly exiling is not the hostile world, but your own authentic self? This sense of being a prisoner within your own defenses, this constant draining war against your own nature, is not a random affliction. It is not your personal failure, but it is your responsibility to understand. This feeling of being perpetually adrift has a source, a powerful and hidden force, operating in the depths of your own mind. It is a shadow cast by the light of your consciousness, and it holds the very key to your liberation. But this sensation of being at war has a source, a hidden force in your own mind, and today we are going to name it. The journey from a fragmented prisoner to a whole individual is the most important work you will ever undertake, but the first step must be a conscious declaration of intent. Comment, "I seek my totality," to begin this journey. Of course, here is Act 2 of the script, crafted to your precise specifications. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Toment o lectot name blad blad toward a one janum street. Tomen doc nor block 2, the mentor and the map. The philosopher Allan provided a crucial key for navigating the complex inner world. He taught that the human mind is not a machine to be controlled, but a natural process to be understood, much like a forest or a river. The attempt to force the river to flow uphill, to command the forest to be silent, is not only futile but is the very source of our psychological suffering. He posited that the Western ego's obsession with control and domination over nature extends inward, creating a tyrannical relationship with our own psyche. This internal despotism is the engine of your suffering. The desire to become insensitive is a direct expression of this tyrannical impulse, a desperate, misguided attempt to conquer a part of your own internal landscape, because you have been taught to fear its wilderness, its unpredictability, and its raw, untamed power. Therefore, the journey you are undertaking is not about learning new techniques of suppression or building a more resilient emotional armor. That is the old war, the one you have been losing your entire life. Instead, this is a journey of cartography, of mapping the vast, unknown territories within your own consciousness. Watts serves as our guide, his philosophy, the compass that allows us to explore this terrain without fear. You must abandon the role of the soldier trying to conquer a hostile land and adopt the mindset of the explorer, filled with a solemn curiosity for what lies in the shadows. The answers you seek are not in reinforcing your fortress, but in understanding the very ground upon which it was mistakenly built. This requires courage, for it means venturing into the places you have deemed unacceptable. The landscape we are about to enter is the psyche itself, your psyche. It is a world as real as the one outside, populated by powerful forces and ancient patterns known as archetypes. Your pain, your hypersensitivity, your feeling of being overwhelmed, these are not flaws in your character, but are features of this inner geography, signals pointing toward vast, untapped reserves of energy and meaning. For too long, you have lived on a small, well-lit island of consciousness, while fearing the vast, dark ocean of the unconscious that surrounds it. But it is in that ocean that the treasures of wholeness are found. We will now turn our gaze toward the deepest part of that ocean, to the source of the turbulence you have tried so desperately to ignore. Thames, Block 3, the revelation of the shadow. We now arrive at the conceptual heart of your struggle, the core of the conflict that has defined your inner world. In the language of analytical psychology, the force you are at war with has a name. It is the shadow. The shadow is a universal archetype, a fundamental component of the human psyche. It is the container for everything within yourself that you have repressed, denied, or disowned. It holds all the traits you were taught were unacceptable. Your vulnerability, your aggression, your perceived weaknesses, your profound sadness, and your untamed creative impulses. It is, in essence, the other side of your personality, the dark brother to your conscious ego. You have been calling this part of yourself overly sensitive and treating it as a curse to be eradicated through numbness. This is the central error of your approach. The shadow is not an enemy to be defeated. It is a vital and inseparable part of your totality. Your very attempt to become insensitive is an act of profound self-rejection, a declaration of war against a piece of your own soul. As Watts would emphasize, what you resist persists. Every ounce of energy you expend trying to suppress and deny the shadow is the very energy that feeds its power in the darkness of your unconscious. It does not weaken or disappear. It grows stronger, more volatile, and more desperate for recognition. The deep sense of fragmentation you experience, the feeling of being at war with yourself, is the direct and unavoidable consequence of this internal civil war. When the shadow is ignored and repressed, it does not lie dormant. It projects. This is a critical mechanism to understand. The psyche will always seek wholeness, and if you refuse to consciously acknowledge a part of yourself, it will force you to see it in the world around you. The weakness you despise in others is your own disowned vulnerability. The incompetence that infuriates you and colleagues is your own repressed fear of inadequacy. The world becomes a gallery of your own rejected traits. Your problem is not that the world is hostile, it is that you have populated it with the ghosts of your unintegrated self. Your war is not with them, it is with your own shadow. Tom's Block 4:1, the recognition of the shadow. The first step on this path of integration is not one of action, but of profound and radical observation. You must declare a ceasefire in your internal war. The objective is to stop fighting and simply start seeing. This is a move away from judgment and toward a state of neutral, courageous awareness. For your entire life, the moment a negative or weak emotion has surfaced, your immediate, conditioned response has been to attack it, to shame it, to push it back down into the darkness from which it came. This reactive cycle is the mechanism of repression, and it is the chain that binds you to your suffering. The first act of liberation is to consciously choose not to engage in this battle. This means that the next time you feel that familiar sting of rejection or the overwhelming weight of sadness, your task is different. You are not to build the wall higher. You are not to numb yourself. Instead, you are to turn your conscious attention toward the feeling and give it a name. You must learn to say to yourself, "This is my repressed vulnerability," or "This is my exiled anger," or "This is the sadness I have refused to mourn." This act of naming is not an intellectual exercise. It is an act of profound validation. It is the first time you are treating these exiled parts not as enemies to be vanquished, but as legitimate components of your psyche that are communicating with you. By simply recognizing and naming the expressions of the shadow, you begin a process of disidentification. You start to understand that while you experience these feelings, you are not defined by them. They are psychic weather patterns, not the entirety of your sky. This conscious recognition is like turning on a light in a dark room. The monstrous shapes you feared are revealed to be ordinary furniture, parts of the house you had simply refused to enter. This initial step drains the shadow of its terrifying demonic power and begins the sacred work of bringing it out of the unconscious and into the transformative light of your awareness. It is the beginning of coming home to yourself. Traumas Block 5, 2, the dialogue with the occult. The second step evolves from recognition to communication. Having acknowledged the presence of the shadow, you must now learn to listen to its language. The psyche rarely speaks in direct, logical terms. Its primary language is that of symbols, images, and symptoms. Your anxiety, your chronic procrastination, your sudden fits of rage, your persistent feelings of emptiness. These are not random malfunctions of your mental machinery. They are communications. They are sophisticated, albeit painful, messages from the repressed parts of your psyche, begging for your conscious attention. As long as you treat these as problems to be eliminated, you remain deaf to their meaning, and they will only grow louder and more disruptive in their attempts to be heard. Therefore, you must fundamentally shift the question you ask yourself in moments of distress. You have been conditioned to ask, how do I get rid of this feeling? This question positions you as a victim and the feeling as an aggressor, perpetuating the internal war. The transformative question is, what is this feeling trying to tell me? This simple inversion of inquiry changes everything. It reframes you as a student of your own psyche. It turns a symptom from a meaningless affliction into a meaningful symbol. Your anxiety might be telling you that a fundamental security is being threatened. Your procrastination might be the voice of a deep fear of failure that you have refused to confront. This practice of dialogue is the very heart of the integrative process. It is an act of profound internal respect, an offering of attention to the parts of yourself you have long treated with contempt. You begin to treat your inner world with the same curiosity and seriousness you would a respected teacher. Allan Watts often spoke of trusting the wisdom of the organism, and this is the practical application of that principle. You are learning to trust that your pain is not a mistake, but a pointer. It is a guide leading you away from the false safety of your ego's fortress and toward the deeper, more authentic truth of your whole being. Nimes Block 6, 3, the illusion of control. The third principle you must internalize is the absolute futility of forceful control, a concept Allan Watts famously illustrated with the law of reversed effort. The more you consciously try to force yourself to be calm, the more agitated you become. The more you struggle to silence a thought, the more it echoes in your mind. This is because the ego, the part of you that craves control, is using the mind to fight the mind. Watts would compare this to trying to smooth turbulent water with a flat iron. The very act of intervention only creates more waves and chaos. Your entire strategy of building an emotional fortress is a perfect example of this flawed, self-defeating logic in action. Your desperate attempt to manage, suppress, and control your emotional responses is the primary source of your inner turmoil. You believe that if you could just achieve perfect command over your feelings, you would find peace. The truth is the exact opposite. The demand for control is the essence of your anxiety. It is a constant, exhausting, and unwinnable struggle against the natural, spontaneous flow of your own psychic life. True emotional mastery does not arise from iron-fisted control, but from a radical letting go. It is the cessation of hostilities, the surrender not to the external world, but to the undeniable reality of your own inner nature. This surrender is not weakness, it is the highest form of wisdom. It involves shifting from the role of a frantic commander to that of a spacious observer. You learn to witness your feelings as they arise, move through you, and pass away, much like watching clouds drift across the sky. You understand that you are the sky, not the individual clouds. This awareness creates a space between your sense of self and the emotional weather. It is from this space of non-controlling observation that true freedom emerges. You stop fighting the waves and instead learn to surf, using their energy rather than being crushed by it. Contrarid Block 7, 4, the alchemical marriage. The fourth stage of this journey requires understanding the psyche's fundamental need for balance, a process ancient alchemists called the conjunctio asterisk, or the sacred marriage of opposites. The psyche is not a monolithic entity. It is a dynamic system that functions through the tension between contrary forces, consciousness and the unconscious, order and chaos, strength and weakness, light and shadow. A healthy psyche is not one that has eliminated the darkness in favor of the light, but one that has integrated both into a resilient and dynamic whole. Your pursuit of pure, invulnerable strength is a spiritually adolescent fantasy. It is an attempt to create a one-sided personality which is inherently brittle and destined to shatter. Your work, then, is not to become stronger by eliminating weakness, but to forge a new kind of strength that is defined by its capacity to contain its opposite. This is the essence of psychological alchemy. True invincibility is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the courage to be consciously and fully vulnerable without collapsing. True power is not the denial of fear. It is the ability to act with purpose, even while feeling fear. You must become a container large enough and strong enough to hold the tension of these opposites within yourself. This is the movement from a simple, fragile ego state to a complex, resilient, and whole personality. This is the alchemical transmutation. You take the lead, the heavy, dark, and devalued material of your shadow, your sensitivity, your pain, and you apply the heat of conscious, non-judgmental attention to it. Through this sustained process of recognition and dialogue, you begin to transmute that lead into psychological gold. This gold is not a life free from pain, but a life rich with meaning. Your sensitivity ceases to be a curse and is revealed as a source of profound empathy and intuition. Your anger, once integrated, becomes the fuel for setting healthy boundaries. You do not become less, you become immeasurably more. 9th, Block 8, 5. The danger of the unintegrated shadow. The fifth realization must be a clear-eyed understanding of the profound danger of failing to do this work. An unacknowledged shadow does not simply fade away, it becomes autonomous. When you refuse to engage with it consciously, it seizes control of your life from the darkness of the unconscious. It becomes the hidden director of your fate, ensuring you repeat the same painful patterns with devastating consistency. It is the source of self-sabotage, that inexplicable impulse to ruin a good relationship or abandon a project just as it nears success. It is the wellspring of moods that descend upon you without reason, and the engine of compulsions that drive you toward behaviors you consciously despise. Furthermore, the unintegrated shadow is the master of projection. This is the most insidious of its mechanisms. Because you cannot bear to see your own disowned traits, your psyche forces you to see them everywhere else. The world becomes a terrifying mirror. You become hypersensitive to criticism from others because your own inner critic, a core figure in your shadow, is relentless and cruel, and you project its voice onto everyone you meet. You perceive others as weak, judgmental, or incompetent, because you have amputated and exiled those very qualities from your own self-concept. Your fortress walls do not keep the world out. They merely ensure that you are imprisoned with your own projected demons. This is the ultimate and tragic cost of your quest for insensitivity. The armor you have so painstakingly constructed does not protect you from pain, it guarantees it. It ensures that you will never truly see another person, but only ever interact with the disowned fragments of yourself that you have cast upon them. It condemns you to a life of shadowboxing, forever fighting an enemy that is, in truth, your own reflection. To leave the shadow unintegrated is to choose a life of psychological servitude, forever haunted and controlled by the very parts of yourself you have refused to love. The only path to freedom is to turn and face them. 9 Blind Block 9. The climax of understanding, the path to individuation. Here we arrive at the climax of this entire psychological journey. It is not a single dramatic event, but a profound and life-altering shift in understanding. The goal was never to defeat, conquer, or destroy the shadow. The entire war was based on a false premise. The true and only solution is to integrate it. This is the culmination of all the previous steps: the recognition, the dialogue, the surrender of control, and the alchemical marriage of opposites. Integration is the conscious act of inviting the exiled parts of yourself back into the kingdom of your being, of looking at your vulnerability, your anger, and your fear, and saying, "You belong here. You are a part of me." This conscious, deliberate process of integration is the very essence of what the great pioneers of psychology called individuation. Individuation is the lifelong journey of becoming an individual, that is, a self that is no longer divided, no longer at war with its own components. It is the process of reclaiming all the disparate and conflicting parts of your psyche and unifying them into a coherent, functioning whole, centered not in the fragile ego, but in a deeper, more expansive self. Your sensitivity is not an obstacle to this process. It is the royal road. It is the very doorway through which the unconscious makes itself known, offering you the raw material for your own completion. This, then, is the final revelation. The armor was a lie, a desperate construction of a fragmented self trying to protect one part of itself by exiling another. Wholeness is the only true defense. A person who has integrated their shadow does not need armor because they are no longer brittle. They possess a flexible resilience, a deep-seated strength that comes from accepting their total reality. They are not insensitive, they are profoundly sensitive, but their sensitivity is now coupled with a vast container of consciousness that can hold the experience without shattering. You did not come here to feel less. You came here to learn how to become a being whole enough to feel everything. Of course. Here is Act 3 of the script, crafted to your precise specifications. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Hash, hash, hash. Donald, Act 3, the synthesis of individuation. Donald, Block 10, the unarmored self and the path forward. You began this journey, seeking the cold comfort of insensitivity, a shield against a world you felt was too sharp, too loud. You leave now with a far more profound and demanding task. To be radically, consciously sensitive, not to the chaotic whims of the external world, but to the total, undeniable truth of your own psyche. The unarmored self is not weak. It is profoundly and dynamically resilient. It does not fear pain, for it has learned that pain is a messenger, a guide pointing the way back to wholeness. It does not fear the world, for it knows the only landscape that truly requires navigation is the one within. This is not the end of your struggle, but the beginning of your authentic life, lived without the suffocating weight of a false defense. The power dynamic within you has fundamentally shifted. You are no longer a victim tossed on the waves of your unconscious impulses, but the conscious architect of your own inner world. The tools for this great work are now in your hands. The practice of recognition, the courage of dialogue, and the wisdom of surrender. The map to your own totality has been revealed. It is now your sacred responsibility to walk the path, to continue the exploration of your own depths with curiosity rather than condemnation. Your sensitivity is not a curse to be managed, but the very compass that will guide you home. You now possess the power not to feel less, but to feel everything with a consciousness vast enough to hold it. This new way of being is a dance, not a battle. As the philosopher Allan once so wisely taught, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. Your emotions, your moods, the whispers of your shadow. This is the music of your own unique existence. For so long you have tried to silence the orchestra, believing peace could only be found in silence. Now you understand that peace is found in learning the rhythm, in moving with the melody, in allowing the full symphony of your being to play. Stop resisting the music. Let it move through you. The dance of individuation is the dance of life itself. This work is never finished. Individuation is not a destination you arrive at, but a lifelong process of becoming more fully and authentically yourself. The journey toward wholeness is the greatest adventure you will ever undertake. You are now equipped to begin. If this message has resonated with your search for truth, subscribe to this channel to continue deepening your journey into the psyche. Share this knowledge with another soul who may be lost in the war against themselves, so they too can find their own path toward integration. Your totality awaits. Begin.